Well, Glenn, I want to turn to where you are right now, to Brazil. Glenn Greenwald, you're speaking to us from Rio de Janeiro. On Friday, an operation by Brazilian military police there in Rio left at least 13 people dead after a shootout in the neighborhood of Santa Teresa. Police say they were there to investigate suspected drug traffickers, but encountered gunfire when they entered the area. Last month, Rio's new governor, Wilson Witzel, said that city security forces are authorized to shoot to kill suspects. He also said Rio should have its own Guantanamo Bay to house criminals whom he labeled terrorists. Brazil's new president, Jair Bolsonaro, has vowed to intensify the war on drugs. While running for president, Bolsonaro said a good criminal is a dead criminal. And in other news from Brazil, Brazil's first elected openly gay federal lawmaker, Vish, recently left his post and fled Brazil amidst growing homophobic violence coinciding with the rise of Bolsonaro. And he's now replaced in Brazil's Congress by your husband, David Miranda, a Rio City Council member. Glenn, can you talk about this latest news in the state of Brazil under Bolsonaro?
So this is what everybody was afraid of when Bolsonaro won. He got elected based on his promise to unleash the police and to authorize indiscriminate violence in the favelas where the poorest people in Brazil live, largely black, to give the police immunity for when they engage in indiscriminate slaughter. He's talked about this as a war. He's using the Duterte model in the Philippines of just going in and indiscriminately killing poor people, killing drug dealers, but also innocent people. And the governor of Rio de Janeiro is on some level even more extreme. And this is probably the first overt manifestation of that policy where 13 people were killed. Folha, the largest newspaper in Brazil, reported that at least several, if not most, of the people killed were executed after they surrendered, which means it was just summary execution. The police laughed and told the frightened residents that the next time it'll be 20 people who are dead. So this is just the beginning of what is certain to be a very frightening climate. As far as Congressman Jean Willis fleeing the country, that obviously is very frightening as well, given that the other prong of Bolsonaro's appeal was his constant, vicious homophobia, depicting gay people as pedophiles, as a threat to children. And Jean was a really courageous figure. He was, for a long time, the only openly gay member of the Brazilian Congress. He was literally physically bullied. They would bash into him in the hallway when they passed him. They would call him faggot. He suffered a lot over the last decade. I know him personally very well. And he just reached the point where he was getting very specific death threats saying, here's your address, here's your license plate, we're going to chop your mother up and send you her head, horrific things. And he decided he just no longer could withstand that level of fear. My husband, as he said, ran for Congress, came in right behind him, and therefore legally took over that position when Jean Willis renounced it. And my husband is now one of 2 openly gay members of the lower house of the Brazilian Congress and is already facing similar kinds of attacks and similar kinds of threats. That's the climate that has been created here in Brazil quite deliberately by President Bolsonaro. But, we'll see how things unfold. There's a lot of opposition in the media, I'm happy to report. There's a vibrant left-wing movement coalescing against this, and I have a lot of optimism about the ability to fight against this.
How are you going to protect yourselves and your children?
Obviously we are aware of the fact that we're both a very visible gay couple. I have, as you know, a media outlet, The Intercept Brazil, that has grown very, very rapidly, that has a very large audience, and that has been very critical of Bolsonaro. And in a country where there's a lot of hostility towards LGBTs, we as a interracial, visible gay couple with 2 adopted children from the northeastern part of the country are obviously threats, and we're aware of that. We're taking security precautions. But, I look at Brazil as a country that I love, that belongs to my husband and my children, and is one that we intend to stay and fight for as well as we can.
Well, a former Rio de Janeiro police officer with ties to organized crime has been identified as the likely killer of a prominent human rights, gay rights activist, city council member, your friend Marielle Franco, who was shot dead along with her driver in Rio last March. According to a police report reviewed by your media outlet, The Intercept, 6 witnesses have identified the ex-cop as the killer. The officer, who hasn't been publicly named, had been kicked out of Rio's military force, now works as a mercenary for dirty politicians and others. Witnesses say the gunman didn't act alone. Where have you taken these links from there?
Yeah, so I think it was actually an important context I left out of the discussion of Jean, which is that Jean was part of the same party, the PSOL party, that Marielle Franco belonged to. Marielle Franco, as you mentioned, the black woman from the favela who was also LGBT, assassinated 10 months ago. Her killers are still unapprehended. It's the same party that one of its leaders was just revealed to have been very close to being assassinated by the militia. And these militias, and it's also the party of my husband, and the head of this militia had his wife and his daughter, his wife and his mother working in the cabinet of Flavio Bolsonaro, who was a state representative and is now a federal senator, the son of Jair Bolsonaro, which means the Bolsonaros have direct and close ties to the most dangerous and violent militia in Brazil, the one that played a critical role, the police say, in killing Marielle Franco. This is something that everybody is extremely interested in investigating. We all knew that the Bolsonaros philosophically supported the militias, but it came as quite a shock to learn how close of ties, actual ties, the Bolsonaro family has to the leaders of this militia. I regard this as one of the most serious and one of the gravest scandals in Brazil. It's something that we as a media outlet and other media outlets are very aggressively investigating, and I hope the police, who say they are doing that as well.